total drama. If you're familiar with my channel, then you already know what this show is, and that I'm obsessed with it. And I've been obsessed with it since... Okay, hang on, let me do the math. Okay, I watched Total Drama before my FNAF phase. FNAF came out in 2014. Yeah, since I was 10 years old. That is the majority of my lifetime ago. And as you can probably guess, when you're that hyper-fixated on a series, you go out of your way to find as much fan content as you can. And you best believe I did. The fandom pre-Disventure Camp was the wild flippin' west. Actually animated and somewhat professionally produced series like Disventure Camp were incredibly rare. You had object shows like Battle for Dream Island and Inanimate Insanity, but I think by now we can all agree that the OSC is basically its own thing. It's a whole different ballgame, so unfortunately I won't be discussing any object shows in this video, but if this video does well, I will make a follow-up that will cover them in more detail. For the time being though, we're gonna talk about some TD-inspired series, new and old, that can't really fill a video by themselves. Starting with some of the ones that you all recommended to me.
Out of all people, why pick on me?
Prior to doing research for this video, the only thing I knew about Revolution Island was that it spawned this clip.
What a beautiful day it is today!
And I never really thought about the series beyond that. But after seeing it suggested in my community tab and realizing that there were only 5 episodes to watch, I figured this would make for a relatively straightforward viewing experience. It was not. On an objective level, Revolution Island is obviously nowhere near the level of projects like Disventure Camp or Reality Resort, so if you want something on that level, Revolution Island is not what you're looking for. But given that this was likely made by a very small team, holding it to those standards would not be fair. So I think it's better if we judge this series for what it is, and what it is bizarre. Having watched the original TDI, without exaggeration, at least 20 times over, I can confidently point out pretty much everything that Revolution Island tries to emulate from it. But the way the episodes are presented, everything's just a little bit off. If you've ever seen Miracle Star or like SpongeBob in Tehran, that's kind of the feeling that this one gives off. And I'm not trying to say that Revolution Island is a bootleg like either of those two, but it's so similar to what it's based on, but just different enough so that it's really weird, like a kind of uncanny valley feeling. On a technical level, there's a lot to be desired here. The animation isn't perfect, there's a couple errors here and there, but for the most part, it's fine. But as for the writing and voice acting, those issues stand out a lot more. I think the biggest issue is probably the script, because sometimes the characters will start talking and the dialogue will make no goddamn sense.
Okay, I know. I threw the topic off the chart, but I need to know more what Jack is capable of. Not that he's high and I like him. Never mind that. You didn't hear anything.
Maybe the writer has English as a second language, and if that is the case, then I do apologize for being harsh. But I think a lot of this dialogue probably should have gone through a few revisions before release. Now, so far I've mostly been criticizing the series, and that is primarily because it's not very good. But that doesn't mean the series has nothing to offer. There's a couple aspects of Revolution Island that are so absurd that they absolutely deserve a mention here. First and foremost, we gotta talk about Raymond. Pretty much everyone in this cast has a fairly monotone vocal delivery, but for some reason Raymond is constantly screaming like Black Suit Spider-Man.
Yes, I got him! Sophia, did you see?
Uh-oh.
His VA is clearly very passionate about the character, and I do give him props for that. I hesitate to call it a good vocal performance because quite frankly, after 4 episodes, it did start to get on my nerves, but I would be lying if I said that I didn't find him at least a little bit endearing. You've also got characters like Ralph, and if I can be honest for a moment, Ralph is so goddamn annoying. He's not funny, and he sounds like Monokuma with laryngitis. I bring him up though, because in episode 1, he is literally 2 feet tall, and his skin is constantly changing color, which is something I can honestly say that I've never seen anywhere else, so I thought it deserved a mention. My favorite character, though, would have to be Ace, because he both looks and acts like Tom Disventure Camp and Ezekiel's love child. He's clearly intended to be this mysterious guy who's athletic, cunning, and a master of strategy. The type of guy who isn't here to make friends, and is always one step ahead of the competition. But in practice, he comes off as a total edgelord with, like, negative social awareness. My favorite example of this happens in episode 5. Let me quickly set the stage for you. This girl, Jessica, is really suspicious of Ace because she saw him sneaking around the girl's cabin. And when confronted about it, he just completely blows her off.
Mind telling me what you were doing sneaking outside of my cabin?
That's none of your concerns. Don't be snooping around my business.
What do you mean, none of her business? You should not have been there. And he did it in the middle of the night. If this was a normal summer camp, you know they would have called his parents already. And I didn't know where to put this last part, but the first elimination is so funny. The challenge is basically knock your opponent off the platform. And team captain Emily is very insistent that fucking Ralph go first. For some reason. Like, this is the same team that has goddamn Hank the Tank on it, but Emily's just like, nah, the human Goomba is gonna get us a point. Ace later suggests that her plan was to throw the challenge and get Ralph voted out, which, like, if that was actually the case, then that might be the most baffling strategy in any TD-inspired show that I've ever seen. She's the team captain. She chose him to be on her team. He wasn't even last pick, he was like 7th to last. She had options. She could have just not picked him. Also, this is literally the first challenge. Why are you already trying to throw? My personal headcanon is that between episodes 1 and 2, Ralph annoyed Emily so much that she was willing to throw the first challenge just to get rid of him. And I don't blame her. If I have to spend another moment listening to Ralph talking about his fucking quarter, I'm going to stomp on his head and kill him. But if there's anything that I can give Revolution Island credit for, it's that the quality noticeably improves with every episode. Episode 5 is a significant improvement over Episode 1, and I think it's nice to see a series progress that way. Now, to my knowledge, Revolution Island is currently being remade/rebooted, and I think that's the right call. The original was a good first attempt at a series, but now that the team is more experienced, I think things will be better on the second go around. Revolution Island isn't great, but there was clearly a lot of heart put into it, and I think there's a lot of ironic charm that makes these episodes enjoyable in their own way. I doubt I could stomach a full season like this, but just for 5 episodes, it's not a bad time. Also, this guy is literally just Dan, and I think that's hilarious. Actually, not yet. I still have more to say about Revolution Island. Originally, I was going to end the segment there, but between writing the script and now, the first episode of the rebooted Revolution Island actually came out. So I should probably watch that.
Oh look, a free iPad.
It's definitely an improvement over the original. The animation is significantly better, although maybe a little too bouncy at times. It looks like the characters are made of rubber. But it's still good, and the backgrounds are a lot better as well. Raymond's VA definitely improv'd a lot of his lines, and I think that was probably the right call. His dialogue is genuinely entertaining. I wish he'd toned down his enthusiasm by like 20%, because he is a lot. He's still the most standout character in the cast though, so take that as you will. The new hosts seem pretty decent. I like the blonde one more than I like Derek, so you know, that's something. I don't really have much to say on these guys, but I am glad that they replaced Chris. Clearly, this reboot is trying to stray away from total drama and find its own identity, and I think these guys will really help with that. And, yeah, that's about it. I think it's better than the original, and I'm happy to see how it's improved, but I personally think it's just okay, and I probably won't be following this one. But maybe Revolution Island might be up your alley, and if my review has you interested, I'd recommend giving it a look. The Million Game Academy. This one's been on my radar for a while because it seems people really like this one. I was getting requests to talk about this one since it came out basically, so I knew I'd have to bring it up in this video. I finally sat down to watch the episode in preparation for this video, and after thorough deliberation, I've come to the conclusion that I feel absolutely nothing towards it. Granted, I have been watching animated reality shows in this vein for the majority of my time on Earth, so you might get more mileage from this show than I do. But for the most part, I just didn't click with this one, and I left feeling underwhelmed. Now that being said, I do recognize Million Game Academy's strengths, namely those in the visual department. I fucking love the way this show looks. On a technical level, this is the total drama art style, but the character designs and backgrounds are stylized in such a way that it really stands out. The island of Rosewood looks absolutely gorgeous. The beach looks good, the forest looks good, the academy building looks really good, and altogether they form one of the nicest locations I've ever seen in a show like this. Dare I say, I like the look of Rosewood more than Stawaki Carnival and Paradise. I want to jump into the screen and just exist in this world for a little while. God damn. Why can't real life look this good? It's not fair. If everything else in this episode was as good as the art, then I'd be singing an entirely different tune, but alas, this is where things start to go downhill. The character designs for the most part are pretty solid. Most of the characters look fine, and a handful look really good. But by that same metric, however, you've also got Eddie, who looks like the Crimson Chin. You've also got this Killua-looking motherfucker, and then just straight up Marco Diaz and Star Butterfly. There's nothing wrong with taking inspiration from other IPs, but much like the actual Starverses, there's basically no subtlety here. But from my perspective, the biggest issue with MGA is definitely its writing. Aside from the host and Veronica, who has a character concept that I can absolutely get behind, none of the cast stands out to me as interesting or noteworthy. Like, I don't mean to keep picking on my man Eddie here, but I have no idea what his deal is supposed to be besides looking and sounding like a creepy weirdo. And even then, some of the more prevalent characters such as Floor and Augustine don't stand out for good reasons. Floor is basically like if you took Island Beth and Roti Stacy and then fused them into one character. And if that sounds like it would be annoying, yeah, you can definitely write a character like this and write them well, but pretty much everything about Floor's presentation seems designed to annoy the audience, which is fine if she's going to be an early boot, but given how much screen time she has, I kinda doubt that. As for Augustine, she's this show's designated mean girl diva, and at first glance, she's honestly pretty good in that role. I really like her design, and while her scenes aren't mind-blowing, I still think they work. All in all, I thought Augustine was pretty charming. Or, you know, I did, and then she dropped a slur, and that sort of changed things. I'm not gonna dwell on this too much because I don't think it's worth harping on about a situation that's long since been resolved, but I really can't talk about this episode without bringing it up. There was, at one point in time, a moment in the episode where Augustine calls Paloma, this stoner character, the R-slur, which is a big fucking yikes, and basically the only thing I knew about the episode before I watched it. Now it is worth noting that Hey Kato Productions, which is the crew behind Million Game Academy, is a Spanish production, and they have gone on to state that they didn't understand how severe the word was in English, which is why they quickly removed it from the episode and gave an apology shortly thereafter. While I do believe Hey Kato had no ill intent while writing their script, and that their immediate response and correction was handled well, how did none of the English translators catch that? I'm willing to chalk this up to an inexperienced team making a mistake, because I do genuinely believe that's what happened. The team knows better now, and I doubt they're going to make the same mistake again. Believe me, when I was younger, I made a very similar error. At the end of the day, they did remove the slur, and I always want to give credit to people who recognize and fix their mistakes, even if I myself still have a bit of a sour taste from the original episode. But that's a problem that can and has been easily fixed. The characters and the writing, not so much. I understand why people like this one, but I'm probably not going to watch any more episodes. The art in Veronica may be gorgeous, but unless everything else drastically improves by the next episode, I don't think I have much interest in Million Game Academy. But your tastes might be different than mine, and if this sounds like a show you might be interested in, then by all means, go nuts. But as for me, I'm gonna pass.
Hello everybody, my name is Markiplier and welcome to
You know that one meme of Markiplier where he's edited to look like Chris McClane? Well, that's a show now. Clash Island is essentially total drama, but instead of a bunch of randos, it's your favorite internet personalities. And XQC. This series comes courtesy of Chester801, aka Jesse Ilg, who, if you don't know, has actually been a part of the total drama community for quite some time. He's also the creator of Oske Island, and if you've seen Oske Island, then you probably know exactly what you're getting into with Clash Island. I'm honestly just baffled that this one exists. Like, this feels like it should have been released about a decade ago with no budget, and yet here we are. The year of our Lord, 2025, and fucking Moist Critical is sending Meat Canyon into the goddamn stratosphere with a rocket-powered golf club. The absurdity of that sentence also permeates the entire show, and is probably the best thing about it. That, and the animation, which I believe was mostly handled by Jesse Ilg himself. He's a seriously talented animator. I'm pretty sure he worked on Rick and Morty at one point. But more importantly, this is the series where Markiplier canonically shares a screen with Carter McQuaw, whose name I have no idea how to spell. Let's talk about the YouTubers. So I actually know most of these creators, even if only partially in some cases, and from what I can tell, everyone is mostly in line with their real-life counterparts. Moist Critical is easily the best in this regard. Not only does his VA nail his inflections, but the dialogue is pretty much dead on.
There was more shit talk going on there than an old COD lobby on Xbox Live. Only thing missing is the sound of some kid's parents hashing out a divorce in the background, and the one kid screaming racial slurs because his stepdad beats him with a can of soup at night.
XQC is probably the first boot based on how much of a pathetic loser he is, and honestly that's kind of a shame. I can't stand the actual guy, but cartoon XQC is low-key really funny. I can actually understand what he's saying, which might be a little less authentic than the real thing, but you know what, I think it's a change made for the better. Sea-Dog VA and Iron Mouse are both pretty accurate as well. I know that Jesse's a big fan of these two specifically because he did make an animation for Iron Mouse's 2023 animation contest, and Iron Mouse herself has seen the episode. So needless to say, he's done his research. I think he has these two down pat. I also think their voices are really funny because Mouse sounds like a stupid child and Connor sounds like such a douchebag. I'm not insulting the VAs when I say that, they both did an excellent job. I do have to question how Iron Mouse exists in this world. Like, this clearly isn't lore accurate Iron Mouse because then she'd be Satan and she'd immediately win. But she's also not real person Iron Mouse because if she was, medical would not have cleared her. I guess this is a hybrid Iron Mouse, combining both the VTuber avatar as well as the real person, which I can accept. Although it does make me curious to know how that changes her relationship with Connor. I don't know, I guess that's a question for another episode. Amelie clearly isn't normal either, so I guess in Clash Island world, being a VTuber is basically like being an alt girl. Oh yeah, speaking of Amelie, can you guess who Jesse's favorite character is? Even beyond her getting her own exclusive trailer and her having the most detailed design of the cast, you can just kinda tell by the way she gushes over this producer that she's set up for the most plot out of anyone. And if you're at all interested in that plot, do not watch the VA interview. I don't know if it's just me looking into things, but based on what Jesse was saying, I feel like he kind of let on a little more than he really needed to. He came very close to spoiling her entire plot, and if you want to err on the side of caution, I just wouldn't watch the video. Flowers to Violet though, she does a great job providing Monarch's voice. Seriously, full marks. Meat Canyon is a little bit off, because I feel like they lean a little too much into gross out. He feels less like Meat Canyon and more like Owen if he was about 20 years older and really into ARGs. Meat Canyon, or Papa Meat I guess if we're referring to the actual guy, has a very specific energy to him that Clash Island doesn't fully manage to replicate. And that is by no means a death sentence, but it is a little disappointing considering how accurate everyone else is. Outside of that, we've got Saikuno and Jaden Animations. They seem accurate enough, but they don't really do anything, so yeah. Pokemon's here. I don't know anything about her, but she's just one of those influencers that's like, the idea of her is just so funny to me. Not as funny as the best YouTuber, Dream, but she's up there. Maximus Black and Peach Saliva I believe are streamers, and I don't really watch streamers, so I don't really know about them. But by far the weirdest inclusion in this cast is Barbara Dunkelman from Rooster Teeth. Granted, I never really watched Rooster Teeth or Achievement Hunter for that matter, so maybe she was a big part of one of those channels and I just never realized it. I only know her as the voice of Yang from RWBY, a show that I cannot stress to you all enough I hate. And just in general, I really, truly despise Rooster Teeth as a company. Barbara's probably fine though. She's a hell of a voice actress and probably not at all affiliated with Rooster Teeth's terrible business practices, so I don't know what the point of this section was. Actually, I don't think there's much left to go over because I don't think the show has a plot so far. We're only one episode in, so this could very easily change, but aside from Monarch really wanting to meet this producer and Carter McQuaw being salty that Fresh canceled his show, there's not much in the way of story. I can tell that there will be given everything with Monarch, but honestly I'm not sure if the season really needs it. With all due respect to Jesse, I'm not the biggest fan of his writing. He can do comedy fairly well, when he's not attempting gross out, that is. But his dramatic writing definitely needs work. Still, it's clear to me that he and his team have been working very hard to get this out, so I have to give him props for that, because all things considered, this was a fun watch. Clash Island shows a lot of promise, and I'm looking forward to seeing this series continue. Hard to believe that this is the same guy who made Oske Island, which is a whole other can of worms that we will open right now.
So just try and be original.
I'm not gonna sugarcoat it, Oske Island is bad. Now, I've been on my wholesome arc for a little while now, generally trying my best to uplift the shows that I talk about. But with all due respect, I really can't do that here because Oske Island has basically no identity. Based on the first and only episode, as well as a few webcomic panels that I bothered to read, this is basically just a total drama fanfic. Look at this cast. Look at Kimberly. Look at Zoe and Devin. Look at Carter McQuaw and Chief. And now look at Jen. Yeah, that's right. This character on screen is named Jen. You know, like the Roblox game. Which, to be fair, did come after the initial idea of Oske Island, but I hope you understand what I'm trying to get at here. Even the ones whose designs aren't blatantly copied are still clearly stand-ins for existing characters. Vanessa is clearly meant to be Eva. Natalie and Colin are clearly Jeff and Bridget. We got Owen, Lindsay, Ezekiel, Noah. This girl seems to be a cross of both Beth and Cameron. How daring. My favorite example of this is Brett, who I'm positive was initially named Brent because this guy is basically just Trent. Except instead of liking guitars, he's into bikes, which is really funny. Oske Island, as I see it, is a total drama fanfiction with a budget, and not a very good one at that. There is very little effort put into the writing besides copying Total Drama Full Sail, and what effort is there goes almost entirely to Jesse Gill, who is the most obvious Gary Sue I've seen in quite some time. No, I did not accidentally mispronounce Jesse Ilg, who is the creator of Oske Island. I was referring to Jesse Gill, the guy who looks suspiciously like Duncan if he was a SoundCloud rapper. Now, based on that information, you might be inclined to believe that Jesse Gill is a self-insert of some kind, and if that is your assumption, then you would be correct. And in order to prove just how right you are, I am going to recount a list of things that happen with Jesse Gill in this episode. He is introduced to us as the most dangerous criminal in Canada, which immediately gets two girls to fall for him. Side note, during Jesse's introduction, Jen says this.
You're such a liar. He's probably not dangerous at all. Well, he doesn't look like that kind of person, to be honest.
Ma'am, his parole officer just told you that he bit off a dude's fingers and he's chained up like Hannibal Lecter. I feel like you should exercise a little bit more caution. Following this, the plane crashes, and in a miraculous display of heroism, Jesse Gill is able to fly in and save everyone. Now, the scene itself is actually animated very well, but like, wow, they really want you to know that this guy is cool, huh? There's a scene where everyone explicitly comments on and fawns over his tattoo, which is apparently so cool that it makes Kimberly and Jen blush. In my honest opinion, Seth's is better. And right after that, they're left in awe of Jesse Gill's totally cool scar. I love the confessional he has right after. He's just like, yeah, this took a lot of stitches to patch up, but it's pretty cool, I guess. Like, he's so full of it. Why is he doing this? Why is Jesse Gill like this? And lastly, during a scene where this girl, Isabella, is drowning, who else but Jesse Gill swoops in to rescue her? And I feel like after seeing that one, the problem should be apparent. One or two of these things on their own could have worked. Hell, all of these things spaced out across multiple episodes also could have worked, but all of this jammed into one episode, into one character that shares a name with the creator, makes it very hard to beat the allegations after that. I do know that at one point Jesse Ilg did plan to create a series called The Jesse Gill Story, and I'm not sure if he still plans to see that one through, but I do remember there being a trailer uploaded to YouTube not long before Oske Island stuff started coming out. So I imagine transferring the main character of one show to an ensemble cast probably caused a few issues, and I think that's something to keep in mind if/when this series returns. Jesse, if you've stumbled across this video, I want to say for the record that I have a lot of respect for what you've been able to achieve. In terms of what you're doing right now, I think Clash Island had a good start, and I'm really looking forward to see what comes next. I know that Oske Island is a project that you hold very dear to you, so please don't let this analysis deter you from making more. As far as animation goes, you're there, but as far as characters and writing go, I think you should consider making some changes. I'm not gonna go too in depth here because that's not what this video is about, but here are a few rapid fire suggestions that I think may help. For starters, take 6 to 8 characters that you're not as attached to and cut them. 24 is way too big of a cast size, and I think a smaller number would be easier to balance. For the characters that resemble official TD contestants such as Jen, Zoe, and Devin, you need to overhaul them entirely or cut them outright. Beyond the fact that Fresh isn't going to let you put them in the show, by copying these characters so strongly, people are only going to see them as worse versions of the originals. For most of the others, you can probably keep their designs, but make a conscious effort to give them more personality. By cutting down some of the cast, you have the opportunity to recycle their characteristics into the remaining cast members, which will make them stand out more. So instead of 3 one-note characters, for example, you could combine them into one character with several notes. Last but certainly not least, seriously cut down on Jesse's screen time. Overexposure can kill your character in the eyes of the audience. I promise you, if you dial him back, he will be received much better than he was the first go around. If anyone is really curious, you can still watch the episode on Newgrounds or follow the webcomic on Webtoon, although it hasn't been updated in a while, so keep that in mind. Although for my money, I personally wouldn't recommend Oske Island. There are a lot of better shows out there that I think deserve your attention much more. And as far as legacy shows are concerned, that would include...
And besides, your opinions are gross and disgusting.
I don't think this video would be complete if I didn't at least mention Total Drama Gone Wild. If you're someone who hasn't been in the community for very long, it might be tempting to look at Gone Wild, see that it doesn't have the same level of production as Disventure Camp or Reality Resort, and then turn away without a second thought. But what's noteworthy about this series is that it came out in 2016, over 9 years ago by this point. This was about a year after Redonkulous Race wrapped up, a period where the fandom was plagued by uncertainty over the future of Total Drama. And while it didn't have nearly the same fandom as something like Total Drama Next Generation, which came out about 2 years later, this show definitely made waves when it came out. I credit that to the fact that this was one of the first fan series to be fully animated and voice acted. A novel concept now, given how many quality shows have been made since, but back in 2016, this was really the only one. It's obviously not TV quality, but I don't think that was ever the intention. Even still, Gone Wild feels like such an earnest attempt to recapture the magic of Total Drama, and I give it props for that. It's definitely more of a Total Drama fan project than a full-fledged series inspired by it, but unlike Oske Island, Gone Wild clearly tried to do its own thing. Granted, 2 characters, Nicole and Celia, are clearly meant to be the children of Dunkney and Alla Heather respectively, but in this case I actually like how they're used. Nicole is surprisingly well adjusted for a Dunkney love child. She might have an attitude, sure, but she gets along surprisingly well with the nerds, which I think is pretty wholesome. Celia to me feels like Heather and Alejandro just made a child because they wanted a genetically perfect Total Drama contestant, which, judging by an elimination order I found on the wiki, they failed at. Admittedly, there's not too much to say on this one. Gone Wild only made it to episode 3, which is unfortunate, but it makes sense considering what happened behind the scenes. Basically, the head creator lives in a country where military service is mandatory, and that's the kind of thing that really drains your motivation. So yeah, I get why the show just kinda stopped after that. So while we're here, let's go over some of the highlights because there are a few funny moments. The first thing I want to talk about is Michael, the first boot, who's like the pre-alpha version of Alessio. He paints. His elimination is set into motion after Celia walks up to him and is like, hey, you should paint in the forest, and he's just like, you're right, Celia, that's an awesome idea. Which is really funny because A, not 10 seconds prior, he asked for her name and she explicitly did not give it to him. B, he willingly stopped to paint the ugliest landscape possible during a race. And C, even after the challenge finished, this is all he managed to get done. This man is a fraud.
Michael, don't leave me here. Michael, help me.
Bobby Joe is also pretty funny. His whole deal is that he talks a lot and he's kind of stupid, but wait. I've heard this voice before. There's no way this is who I think it is, right? Hold it, hang on, let me check. Object Merry-Go... No fucking way. No fucking way! Bobby Joe shares a VA with Glove from the Object Merry-Go-Round. How did I never make this connection before? Oh my god, I feel like I just opened Pandora's box. I don't think I can talk about this without going off on a massive tangent, but this is genuinely one of the funniest revelations I've had in quite some time. And to anyone who's seen the Object Merry-Go-Round, I think you'll get it. Let's move on before I have an aneurysm. Some other notable characters include Danielle, who really isn't that special on her own, but I feel she's both written and acted in a very genuine way. Also SDZ. Who is SDZ? I think he's funny.
Hey, mommy.
But probably the two funniest characters on a conceptual level only appear in the third and final episode. You probably saw that Chris was hosting the show in the first 2 episodes, but I believe Fresh TV did the thing that Fresh TV likes to do to TD fan products and basically told Bonkow Productions, hey, don't use Chris. And so he was replaced by Tristan Van Dark, who serves the exact same role, but Van Dark is somewhat different in the sense that he both kidnapped a dude and also probably murdered Chris. I desperately need to see a rap battle between Carter McQuaw and Tristan Van Dark. And then halfway through, Kyle Bain joins the battle as well, and it's a total free-for-all. Someone out there, please do this. It would be so cool. Also, this guy Matthew debuts, and I think he's pretty funny. What's worth noting is that both of these characters join in episode 3, which I think is noticeably better than the first 2. Not only does the animation get better, but the character writing is noticeably stronger as well. This was an ambitious series that had its own story to tell. And what really highlights that for me is the scene with Tim in the woods in episode 2, where he discovers this torn journal that warns him about the dangers of the island. The presentation of this scene is excellent. The voice work is very nice, the music really encapsulates the mood of the scene. All in all, it's just really good. Had the series continued, this probably would have been an overarching plotline, but alas, we're only left to speculate on what could have been. For a show released so long ago, I think it's really impressive to see how well Gone Wild has aged. The voice acting is mixed, but the animation is lovely and the vibes are immaculate. It's only 4 episodes long, and I doubt we'll ever see a 5th one, but I still highly recommend watching Gone Wild. It won't knock your socks off, but maybe it'll give you an appreciation for the pre-Disventure Camp era of the fandom. A lot has changed since Gone Wild came out, including the general quality of online cartoons, and Total Drama was no exception to that. Because before Disventure Camp released, there was another fan series on the horizon that looked to be Total Drama's next breath. And that series was, of course... I'm not sure if I have to worry about copyright with this one, but if I do, I've decided to make this one look like film noir, because I think that might help. So I was mostly finished with this script, only to realize that I forgot Total Drama Reunion, which is absurd because it's perfect for this video. I feel like most of you already know the story behind this one, but if not, let me give you a quick recap. Total Drama Reunion was created by Blue Studios and planned as a fan-made TDI continuation taking place 15 years after the original series. The first and only episode released back in 2021, so it predates Disventure Camp by about a year. And because that was during the drought period, the Total Drama fanbase was obsessed with Reunion. How obsessed? Well, if memory serves, this thing peaked at #1 on YouTube's trending tab when it came out, which is an absolutely insane feat. I think that should tell you how starved for content the fandom was, if anything. That's the kind of attention that gets you noticed by Fresh TV, but unfortunately not in a good way. Alas, Reunion is mostly known for being the fan project that Fresh TV forcibly shut down, and I think that really sucks. Not only because the series was canned in the first place, but because it genuinely had a lot of promise. There's a reason why Reunion took off when it came out. Not just because it was something new in the Total Drama universe, but because it felt like something that belonged there. In my opinion, it is very hard for most writers to get Total Drama's cast right. Maybe I'm critical about this because I'm obsessed with the show, but most fan projects that try to write for the original cast usually miss the mark. Now this could be for a few reasons. Sometimes everyone is out of character, sometimes the dialogue doesn't sound natural for a character to say, and sometimes it can be as small as a character having a weird reaction to something in the project. My point is, despite being based on stereotypes, Island's cast has a lot of little details to them that really make them feel like people. And in my opinion, Reunion does a really good job at capturing that, as well as adding on new stuff in line with the premise of the season. I fully believe that the cast of TDI could end up like this 15 years after the original show. The voice acting really helps with that, as I feel like everyone is pretty well cast for the most part. I mean, they got Jakudo to voice Chris, legitimately one of the few people who I think can do a really good Chris impression. Weirdly enough, I think Trent is also really good. Like, the voice sounds right, but all of his little breathy inflections are pretty much dead on, and it's genuinely astounding that they bothered with that sort of authenticity. I can't say it's a perfect episode because there are a couple things about it that could have been better. For starters, I'm somewhat mixed on the tone of this episode. It's not ultra serious or anything, but it's decidedly darker than the original, which does make sense to a degree given the context, but I'm not really sure if it works. I do like the nightmare sequence with Courtney though, that I think was handled very well. And obviously the animation is very well done. These are some very nice character designs, and yes, that does include Cody. Total Drama Reunion was an episode dripping with passion, and while it does suck knowing that it got canned, something tells me this won't be the last we'll see of Blue Studios. And by something, I mean Kruger Mansion. Kruger Mansion is what they're working on right now. I believe, unless I am mistaken, but I don't think I am. There's one more series I want to look at in this video, but before we get to that, I want to go over a few honorable mentions. These are series that didn't make it into this video for one reason or another, so if I didn't cover your favorite series already, it's probably in this section. Camp Drama. I'm gonna be honest, I gave this one a shot, it's just not that interesting. I think this one could be ironically enjoyable, but Revolution Island had that category covered, so I left this one on the cutting room floor. Operation Libertad. This one got recommended a few times, so I gave it a shot and watched the first episode, and I'll be honest, I'm really mixed on this. On one hand, I get a really bad vibe from this show. This looks like if you combine Total Drama and Super Jail together, and that is not a winning combination. There's just a bunch of things that really put me off, namely the character designs. This Waluigi-looking motherfucker is easily the worst of them. I do not like looking at him at all. On the other hand, I actually kinda like the way this show is written. I obviously haven't seen much of these characters, but there's some interesting personalities here. My favorite is definitely this woman, she's just... I need to play the clip.
Ahora, prefiero mantenerme...
Un momento. ¿Tú no eres esa madre que descuartizó y tiró a la basura a sus hijos de 1 y 3 años de edad?
¿En serio?
¡Qué horror! ¡Carne tan joven!
The concept of her character is just so darkly funny to me. And obviously the setting being in a prison is very unique, and from what little I saw, I think they used that premise fairly well. I don't know, if there's a lot of demand for this one, I'll definitely give it another try, but for now, I will respectfully keep my distance. What in God's name is that? Odyssey del Drama / Total Drama Odyssey. I've heard a lot of good things about this one, and I honestly wanted to give it a shot, but unfortunately I felt it was too long to be put in the video. I don't think I would have been able to do Odyssey's 3-season run justice if I put it in this video, so like with Libertad, if there's demand for it, I'll look into this one more. Total Drama Pacateo Island Camp. This one technically shouldn't count, but I doubt I'm ever gonna get the chance to talk about this one anywhere else, so I'm gonna do it here. In the 7th episode of this series, titled Mutations, Chris and Chef are turned into mutants as everyone runs away. Everyone except for everyone's favorite Pacateo Island character, Dave, because as he so eloquently puts it, I can't move 'cause of fear. Dave is promptly ganged up on by a group of mutant fangs, which infect him with the mutation liquid, turning him into a mutant himself. A mutant that just so happens to look like this. I call him Bave. Also, Sky gets eliminated pretty early in this one, and Dave falls into, and I quote, deep depress. Total Drama. Total Drama was easily the most requested series in my community tab, but if you're disappointed that I didn't cover it in this video, don't be. Total Drama will be getting its own dedicated video sometime in the future. There's a lot to talk about with this one, so it wouldn't feel right putting it in a compilation video like this, but I promise you this series will have its time. Total Drama Next Generation. Yeah, this is like 7 seasons. It would take me more time to rewatch this series than it would to watch literally everything else I talked about put together. Needless to say, I'm not going to subject myself to that right now, but this one will get its own video too, don't worry. A lot of you also suggested Fangenrampas, which sure, I can do that. Tetro and Eden's Garden were the standouts, which makes enough sense to me. Tetro is genuinely the best thing to come out of this fandom, and I'm not exaggerating even a little bit when I say that. I think it eclipses the original games wholesale, and I'm not even caught up. I haven't made it to the third body discovery announcement, which I know is a very long time ago. I've been busy. I'm gonna get to it eventually, I promise. Ryan, please forgive me. And as for Eden's Garden, I'm gonna level with you all. I tapped out after the body discovery announcement because I think this one is really boring. The prologue was great, and I was really hyped to see how this one would continue, but once I got into chapter 1, all my excitement for it kind of fell off. Sorry. Total Drama Club Penguin. I know that nobody suggested this series, but I don't care. I am going to make a video on it at some point because it is genuinely the funniest total drama series that I've ever watched. You have not truly lived until you have experienced the magic of Total Drama Club Penguin by Luigi Spanish, and I am going to make sure that each and every one of you experiences that magic. Kruger Man.
Where am I gone yet? Go away.
And last but not least, Sonic Arts. Believe me, this season's time will come, and when it does, I am going to rip it to shreds. This is season 2 to an overarching series, and season 3 would easily be the subject of a massive video if it didn't get removed from YouTube. Sonic Arts is a complete mess, and for the sake of my younger self, I will see to it that it is destroyed. But I can confidently say that none of you watching this video right now are prepared for it. This is for several reasons, but the simplest is that you'd need context for season 1. Wait. Now, I've done my due diligence to give fair criticism and encourage all of these creators and their projects, despite whatever my thoughts on them may be. I will not be doing that here, because for one, both creators have left the internet by this point, so there's really no need to hold back, and two, this one's bad. And when I say bad, I don't mean, oh, this is cringe or very low quality. No, I need to make myself very, very clear here. If you are under the age of 18, then I strongly encourage you to click off this video now. If you are a family member of mine, then I strongly encourage you to click off this video now. I do not want to subject you to this series. And lastly, I need to offer a major content warning. If anything on this list could potentially trigger you, then I strongly suggest you to click off this video now. I am being 100% sincere. The Sonic Total Drama fan series made in MS Paint has all of these things in it. I'm going to cut around the explicit content, both to keep this video monetized and so that none of you have to experience this garbage the way that I did. With all that being said, let's get into Sonic TDI. So the season starts like this.
Hello everyone, my name is Chris McClay, and this is Sonic TDI. Now let's meet the contestants. First up.
So ignoring the voice acting and animation for a moment, I had to turn that down 7 decibels. So right off the bat, this show looks interesting. I mean, credit where it's due, it's better than I could ever draw, but it was very clearly made in MS Paint, which is probably not the best software for this kind of project. But honestly, it wasn't that distracting, aside from furry Chris McClane and you. We're gonna get to the cat later. For now, let me give you a quick rundown of all the other characters. Sonic is Sonic. He's the confident go-getter protagonist guy, or at least he would be if he didn't say a slur in episode 1. Because that's a thing that happens.
We're better than Sonics. You would say that, Knuckles. You stupid
He starts off kinda normal, but then by the merge, he's obsessed with Silver, so at that point he becomes insufferable. Shadow is painfully edgy, unless he's talking to the cat, in which case he's a love-struck, blubbering idiot, which is about as annoying as it sounds. Silver also gets involved with these two in a love triangle later on, which turns Shadow into a massive incel. I can't help but feel like someone was projecting. I actually wrote in the script that apparently he did have one funny moment in the season. One, but I didn't write it down, and I'm not going to look for it, so I'm not gonna talk about Rouge too much because she low-key might get this video demonetized, but let's just say Guptil89 would probably be very happy with how open she is. Despite how poorly she's written, her elimination is honestly kind of iconic. She's probably the second best character in this season by default, so it's kind of funny to see how she goes out.
Fine. If it's fine by you guys, it's fine by me. And I'm taking my fine body and my fine boobs with my fine walk along this fine boardwalk. And if you don't mind, I'm gonna go back to my fine house and eat fine ice cream on the fine freaking floor. Goodbye. Finest, finders, fine.
Hell yeah, girly pop, you get it. Cream the Rabbit is a child. And unfortunately, it is relevant that I have to bring that up. Tikal in general is awful. They made her Izzy, but also Haiji Toa, and if you understood that reference, please explain it to anyone in the comments who may be confused. I'm not going to. You can't make me. Blaze had basically her whole character butchered. She's a spoiled princess who calls everyone peasants, and despite how terrible that sounds, she's arguably the best character in the season, besides maybe Rouge. That should give you an indication of how bad this gets. Even if you don't know anything about Sonic the Hedgehog, you can probably tell by my descriptions that these are not good characters. Case in point, Tails, who is a total brat. Basically all he does is scream, and he screams loud. It probably doesn't sound that bad on your end, but keep in mind I turned that down by 45 decibels. For reference, if I turned my own audio down by that much, you wouldn't be able to hear me. And he does this multiple times throughout the season. There are also a lot of scenes with him that I don't wish to cover in detail. Whatever you are imagining right now, believe me, it is worse. Silver is especially obnoxious because he talks and acts like this.
So, Coco, now that the bitch is gone, you wanna go on our play date?
Not only does he sound like a guy who would stop his car at a school zone, but his entire personality can essentially be summed up as horny otaku who hasn't gone outside in a month. Pretty much every scene Silver's in is torture. The idea was clearly to make him the soft boy of the cast who does cute things and gets shipped with another guy, but in practice he's basically Hifumi Yamada, but a hedgehog. And if you don't know who that is, here's a picture of him. Yeah, basically this vibe. But that's not all! Sonic TDI also includes a fan character who competes alongside the rest of the cast, and her name is Coco Nichao the cat. Now you might look at this character and think, oh, she doesn't seem so bad. Why do you seem to have such a vendetta against this character? Oh, you finna find out. I'm gonna show you. And you're gonna wish I hadn't.
Hate. Let me tell you how much I've come to hate you since I began to live.
So there's a little funny thing about the way this character's name is said. Everyone in the series refers to her as Coco. With that pronunciation, I assume to make it sound more Asian, because both of these creators are fucking weeaboos, and I'm using that term derogatorily. I will be referring to her as Coco, with the most American pronunciation as I can muster, because I hate this cat. Coco is a Mary Sue by every definition of the term, but to make sure I get that point across, I watched this season twice, and on the second time I was focused solely on taking Coco-related notes. The results of my research may prove shocking, or they may not. I don't know. It's up to you. First of all, she's the only quote-unquote normal character. Pretty much all of the men are sex-crazed perverts, and all of the other women are portrayed as either crazy, mean, or otherwise a non-threat to Coco. And as such, they're all eliminated back-to-back, with Coco being the only female contestant to merge. She's also incredibly broken for no reason. Tell me how the cat is able to jump off of a mountain faster than it takes Shadow to teleport. Why is it that Shadow can't kick open a box of rings and needs Coco's machete to help him do it? Why is it that a trained ninja like Espio completely bombs an obstacle course while she can do it no problem? And why is it that she wins basically every challenge and only loses when she forfeits or quits? This is further exemplified by her chibi kitty form, a transformation that turns Coco into a tiny cat who for some reason can do pretty much anything. Yep, in this universe, Shadow the Hedgehog Ultimate Life Form is pretty much helpless against a cat girl with a machete and shape-shifting powers. The season literally could not function without her. She gets eliminated during the pre-merge only to immediately come back and be doted on by everyone. She's so obviously a self-insert Mary Sue that you might be questioning why I'm even bringing this up. You might be questioning why I'm being so harsh towards a project made by two amateurs over a decade ago. Well, I'm glad you asked. Based on their voices, I'm willing to bet that both creators were at least teenagers when writing Sonic TDI, and while I think teenage immaturity can excuse a lot of what happens in this season, there's still a lot of really dodgy stuff here. And I had to watch nearly 2 hours of it. And during that time, I realized that Sonic TDI is depraved. And in order to make that explicitly clear to you, here's a bulleted list of real things that happen in this season. Sonic calls Knuckles the F-slur. Coco shows Shadow how to eat ice cream, which makes him very aroused, prompting him to relieve himself in the lavatory. Challenge 3 deserves its own mini tangent because it is explicitly based around the depravity of the Sonic fandom, and if that sounds like a recipe for disaster, So Furry Chris essentially forces Sonic and Shadow into taking sexy photos with each other. You know, because he's a freak. And after a segment of stolen fan art and probably copyrighted music, he still hasn't gotten the yaoi moment that he wanted. Which prompts Shadow to...
Well then I guess it's time to up the ante. Wait, Shadow, what are you going to...
There's some very gross audio that plays during this part, but I'm not gonna put that in the video. He wins the challenge by doing this, by the way. Okay, not the full challenge. Sonic's team wins the whole thing in the end because it was in 3 parts, and Knuckles doesn't take it well. I will not be showing you the clip because I fear YouTube may not like it, but to summarize, after losing the challenge, he screamed very loud, injected himself with some unsavory substances, and proceeded to bash his head in. You know, like a normal person. So because Knuckles did that, Coco, with all her infinite kindness, decides to forfeit the challenge. What a little cherub, throwing the challenge so that Knuckles won't jump onto spikes without a respawn. Remember when I mentioned Cream the Rabbit being a child? Well... Okay, I'm gonna level with you all. Putting jokes aside from the moment, there's a scene with Cream and Coco in episode 3 that is clearly intended to be fan service, and it is one of the most uncomfortable, revolting scenes I've ever seen in a show like this. I will not be showing this scene or describing it in any amount of detail because just thinking about it makes me actively ill. Based on what I've shown you, it might not seem like it, but there is a lot of very gross sexual content in this show, but everything with Cream is especially bad. There is no justification for content like this, but that's a very heavy subject and not one that should be tackled in a video like this, so we're going to move on. Just know that this type of content is in the season and that you should stay away from it. On a lighter note, there's a quiz challenge in episode 6, and in a matter of 2 questions, Chris goes from asking, what are the names of Sonic's brother and sister, to how long is Sonic's downstairs trouser snake? Silver gets in on the Coco and Shadow love triangle, turning Shadow into a violent murderer man who screams at Coco in an incel rage, only to later form an alliance with Sonic and Silver, despite throwing axes, missiles, and lasers at the latter. Tails is racist. Tails miraculously survives the elimination, and in response to that, opts to, goddammit, relieve himself in front of Chris. I will not be showing you this because it's disgusting. Sonic fans in the audience might be wondering, hey, isn't Tails only 8 years old? Yes! Yes, he is! And not only did the creator know about that, Chris outright brings it up in the following scene. Multiple explicit scenes between Sonic and Silver. Someone please kill me. There's a paintball challenge, and everyone has to do it while wearing Speedos, except for Tails. He doesn't get one. Not because he's a child and that would be incredibly gross, but because he's apparently fat, and it would kill Chris's vibe. During the final 3 challenge, Sonic and Espio beat Chris over the head with a bat. One of the few decisions I can actually get behind. But then there's a scene after that where Sonic is very clearly flirting with Tails, he's very creepy and gross, and it ends with Tails, god damn it, not again! There's another scene where Cream is, fucking hell, there's another Cream fan service scene in the finale. It's between her and Sonic, and it's awful. I hate it. Why would anyone do this? Chris's nephew shows up. Chris is infatuated with him because of course he is. He's a freak. There's a scene between Nephew and Shadow. Shadow kills him, and we end the season with the big reveal. The creators were Hitalia fans the entire time. I'll be honest, I initially went into this section wanting to give the creators the benefit of the doubt because this series came out over a decade ago and they were probably young. But after sitting through this entire thing, this season has killed all of my goodwill. Sonic TDI is without question the worst fan-made total drama series I have ever seen, and the only positive thing I gained from watching it was a newfound appreciation for everything else. Revolution Island may have been rough around the edges, Million Game Academy might have been boring, and Oske Island might not have had an original bone in its skeleton. But all of those projects fundamentally come from a good place, while Sonic TDI does not. Thankfully, the official upload has been purged, but re-uploads do exist on YouTube, and I implore everyone watching this video to stay away from them. I'm serious, rewatching Sonic TDI felt like reliving a childhood nightmare as an adult, and while I'm not traumatized by it or anything, I certainly wouldn't want anyone else to look for it. Keep in mind, when Sonic TDI came out, most of the people watching it were probably young kids. I was a young kid when I first watched it, and I distinctly, clear as day in my mind, remember thinking to myself at the time, this was the good one. I remember seasons 2 and 3 being so much worse, but I'm not talking about them today, or maybe ever actually, because I don't want to think about Sonic TDI ever again. But all things considered, it's clear to me that this community has come a long way with its fan projects. In this video alone, we covered so many interesting projects, and I had to skip most of the big ones. Total Drama, Odyssey, and obviously Next Generation all played a pivotal role in keeping this community alive. And now we're getting new projects all the time, which is awesome. Obviously not all of them are great, but they don't need to be. What's important is that people are creating and this community is thriving. And I had a lot of fun reflecting on how far we've come. And while I'm reflecting, I'm gonna give a huge shout out to my channel members. Factually False, Skohei, Novas, Sheepishly, and Mom. Love you, Mom. These 5 people collectively represent the Cool Kids Club, an esteemed group of Lech Gang fans who I hold in very high regard. I cannot express to them how grateful I am that they would choose to donate to my channel, but I hope they recognize how much I appreciate them. And if you'd like to join this exclusive group, consider joining my channel membership by clicking the join button below. In exchange for a monthly subscription, you can get some pretty cool perks while supporting my creative endeavors on YouTube. If you can't pay though, that's totally fine. Save your money for when you need it. After all, you can always like, comment, and subscribe to the channel because that is totally free and helps me out a lot. I know this video is only 56 minutes long, but that's like 3.5 minutes off from an hour, so this is basically an hour-long video, and that takes a lot of effort to make. So I really hope you enjoyed this video, so all that time is worth it, and I also hope I see you next time. Bye!